Um, so what's preserving the it relational experience, right? We recognize that it's embodiment. At least I can't see what else it would be, right? And he speaks to this because he's later in a second I'll talk about obliteration, and it's obliteration of this confine. You know, in a sense, the body, and I'll draw the man here. The body sort of has dual function, right? There is, in a Kantian sense, there's stuff in the world, and this stuff projects itself to us, right? And it's just completely undifferentiated sense data. It's just thrown, and we make sense of it, right? We ascribe meaning to it, and insofar as we make meaning to it, we reinterpret what that thing is after we've ascribed meaning. The way that we arrive at this meaning is that this data goes through our body, literally, right? It's the hot, it's the cold, it's the sweet, it's the sour, it's the sight, it's the sound, it's the, and so on and so on and so on. All of this goes through our body. Our body is a filter for us to arrive at meaning, right? So one of the classical, and now I want to return to it maybe, I don't know, I'm all over the place after reading Buber, but you know, you sort of have mind-body dualism and whatever, that's basically been done away with in philosophy. But one of the problems that, not really problems, but one of the questions that come up, and some pretty cool articles have been written on this, is sort of the brain in the vat example, right? It's called the brain, you can Google it, brain in, I think it's a vat or the vat, I forget what it is, right? Brain in a vat, right? It's like, could you possibly, but even that is, the brain itself presupposes form, right? So even that's not good enough. But anyway, so the whole idea is, can you have disembodied consciousness, right? Can there be consciousness which is not embodied? Or is the only consciousness possible that of embodied consciousness? Well, if you're a religious believer, if you're a theist, or if you're just a spiritual person that doesn't have any religious belief, then you should at least, or you have to, at least entertain the idea of disembodied consciousness. Because what ends up happening is, it becomes really, really difficult to see, right, and maybe impossible, and I'm pretty good at this type of stuff, this is now more my area, there wouldn't be any causal connection, Hume is right, there really would be, it would be impossible to identify within the laws of physics, within the laws of math, any causal connection between my having nerves and skin and the creation of meaning out of disambiguous, undifferentiated sense data. There's no connection. How we do it is amazing. I don't know how we do it. Nobody knows how we do it. No one can know how we do it. We start with the biggest assumption ever. I mean, epistemology, math, science starts with the biggest assumption ever. Assuming that we know that we are able to interpret meaning from meaningless sense data, then we begin our analysis, right? The question is, how do we do it? Well, we know that it's done through our body, but how does the body do it? And then this is an argument from reduction, right? But how does the body do it? How is it exactly that the body makes meaning out of sense data? You say, oh, well, what light wavelengths are interpreted through our iris, and it sends a signal to our brain, and that, Once you get down to the deepest level, it starts not to make sense, right? Philosophically, of course I understand that, you know, wavelengths have a certain spectrum, and sound has a certain spectrum, and temperature, and so on. We know that, but that's not the question that's being asked. The question that's being asked is merely an attempt to identify and acknowledge the fact that the body, our body, is the source of meaning. And then to ask the logical 5-year-old question, what, or would it be possible, or is it possible for us to still arrive at meaning of the world without this physical thing, without body? Can you do that? Do you need body? Is body the only way that we arrive at this thing meaning? For Buber, he says that our relational experience is a mutual relational experience. It's a I-it or a I-thou. With respect to the tree, and this is on the next page, the primary words, as we know, are I, it, and I, thou. So since the primary words refer to this relationship that we're discussing, right? My relationship with the world. Since the primary words refer to an I it, but also to an I thou. And since, by definition, since we're talking about relationship, this relationship has to be mutual, right? So if it's me here, and it's tree here, then it's not, this is not a relational experience, right? And this is not a relational experience. But to truly be a relational experience, there has to be a back and forth, right? A dialectic. But how do we have a relational experience, an I-thou relational, to be technical, how do we have an I-thou relational experience with a tree? I can understand an I-thou relational experience with another human being, and I'm going to discuss that in a second. That seems more intuitive. It seems less intuitive to talk about an I-thou relational, mutually relational experience with a tree. Well, let's see how this works. So, first point. Since the primary, and I sort of constructed this in an argument so that I could follow along and it'd be easy for you if you want to download this and sort of follow along as well. So relations are mutual, which is first. Since the primary word, the I-thou, refers to necessary relationships, and since relationships are mutual, then my relationship with the tree must be a mutual relationship. Recognizing the mutuality of my relationship with the tree is an essential step in recognizing the tree as thou. I come to recognize the tree as thou, right? Rather than an it. By recognizing that there is a relational experience between myself and the tree. I recognize it as an it when all I see of the tree is what the tree can do for me. What qualities does the tree have that I need? It's a very sort of selfish perspective of the world, right? The I-it relational experience, my recognition of another human being even, and what I do outside of giving YouTube lectures is all about murder and evil and violence and genocide and death and destruction. That's all I do. And it is, this I-it relation, this is why Buber is impacting me now, because I have a new sort of mode of interpreting my own research. Is, if I perceive someone like I perceive this tree, I walk into the forest and I'm like, oh wow, that's going to be a log cabin right there. That's going to be my new chair. That's going to be my new desk. Oh, all of this ground we're going to dig up and we're going to mine. All I'm thinking is I've transformed the world into products, really. And it's not a capitalist blah, 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 right? This is just an interpretation of the world. My interpretation of the world is that the world, as such, specifically the tree, can be compartmentalized, right? I differentiate the branches from the leaves from the root from the bark from the xylem from and so on. So I'm just looking at all the functions and the processes and the things that can, and I'm not really seeing the tree. What I'm doing is I'm seeing parts of the tree. And insofar as I'm only looking at parts of the tree, I'm looking at those parts because they have some significance for me, right? That is to maintain an I-it relationship, right? And it's not mutual, right? This I-it relationship is a relationship where it's sort of me just pulling from, right? You can think of a parasitic relationship as being a relationship, but it's parasitic. The tree is dying so that I can live, right? The host is dying so that I can live. It is a relationship, but it's parasitic. I taught high school biology for a bit, so that I think that analogy sort of holds up. Here is more symbiotic, right? There's an exchange. It's a recognition that, oh wow, what I am exhaling, you're inhaling. What you're exhaling, I'm inhaling. I need you, you need me. Let's see what we can do. I recognize it's not, and I get to a point where there is an even and an I, right? I don't want to jump ahead, but we at least begin this recognition of the thou, insofar as I recognize that there's something there that I have, which you need, and which you have, and I need, and we're really just a cycle. I am one step in a chain to further or continue the life of the tree, such as the life is one step in a chain to further and continue the life of me, right? So there's an interdependency and a mutually beneficial interdependency, right? That's the type of stuff that young kids need to, everybody's talking about going green, right? Saving and recycling and all that. I think that's all well and good, but let's keep it real. Going green isn't about, recycling plastic. That's not going green. Going green begins with changing how you perceive the world. If you're recycling and you still look at that tree as, I'm going to chop that tree down and use it for, paper, or I don't see how that tree relates to me or how I relate to it, you're not going green at all. Going green is a mentality, right? It's not something that you don't pull out the checkbook and write the big fat checks. That's not going green or, recycling. It's just not. I'm not going to get started on green because I'll get upset. Alright, so anyway. So that's Buber. I think he's right on the money. I think that's basically genius.